Morning, Angelo.
Good morning, Angelo.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, all. This is Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Morning, Jamil.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tim.
Mr. Stensley. Hey, Pradeep. I see that our fearless chair has joined. And Dr. Farouk, anytime you want to get started, we will follow your lead.
Do we have a quorum?
Oh, that's a great question. Let's check that. You want to check that in the roll call? Let me just do a quick glance. We do. We have a quorum.
Perfect. In the interest of everyone's time, then we'll get started. So good morning, everyone. I want to open the meeting, our executive committee meeting, to order at 10:01 a.m. And I'm delighted to see everyone again, even if it's virtual. I'm wishing everyone safety and everyone with their families doing well during this time of crisis. This is our meeting of the executive committee of the California Workforce Development Board. I'll be referring to the board as CWDB from this point forward, just for simplicity purposes. We have a full agenda, so we're going to get started. As Tim mentioned, we do have a quorum, but we want to do a quick roll call formally. We have 13 executive committee members, 7 needed for a quorum. If we can just go down the list. Tim, can you please take us through that?
Tim might be on mute.
Can we?
Oh my God! I'm sorry. That I was going down the list and checking people off. It was beautiful. Let me start again. I see Jamil is here. Is Michael Gallo on? Stephen Levy. Mr. Redlow. Gotcha. Mr. Stensley.
I'm here.
Gotcha. Joseph Williams, I see you there. Hi, Joseph.
Morning.
John Brower.
Hello.
Hello, John. Diane Factor.
I'm here.
Hey, what's up, Diane? Jeremy Smith just let me know that he has a conflict that came up just now. Director Hilliard. I think, Jaime, are you representing the director by chance officially?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thanks, Jaime. Shani Weber on behalf of Eli Oakley.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, Shani. And then Secretary Sue. Abby, are you representing the secretary?
I guess I am.
All right, then. It's official. We have much better than a quorum. I believe that's it. Did I miss anyone? Oh, Carol Zabin. Did I miss you? How did I do that? Carol Zabin, the most important one, saved you for last. Are you present? You're on mute. Okay. Carol, you're still on mute, but I got you.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. All right, cool.
Hi.
I can't count you unless you're not on mute. That's the deal, I believe.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, I just made that rule up.
Oh, okay.
Welcome, Carol. I do believe that's it. Did I miss anyone else? I hope not. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you again for everyone taking the time for this executive meeting. Tim shared via email earlier some tragic news about our dear friend and colleague, Dr. Alma Salazar, passing. Tim, do you want to share some more specifics with the board now, please?
I think as most of you know, maybe all of you know, Alma Salazar passed away on Monday, October 5th, after a 2-year battle with cancer. She was a member of our board and she was on this executive committee. She was a member of the board for more than 8 years. She's was a leader in our work, a tireless advocate for the marginalized, underserved, the undocumented. She had a special passion and focus on youth. She, as Abby well knows, she was involved in important organizations that we all work closely with. She was on the board of the California EDGE campaign. She was on the board and very active with the National Skills Coalition. And she was also an appointed member of the California Community Colleges Board of Governors, right, Shani? I mean, she just was an amazing star in our world and a true fighter. And we're going to miss her deeply. So Angela and I wanted to, for all of you to join us in a moment of silence for Alma and her family. So please, let's take a moment. Thank you. Unite LA, where Alma was the vice president, established a scholarship in her name. So for those of you wishing to join that in honoring Alma, you can reach out to Natalie Pittman at Unite LA. She's the director of operations and strategy, and her email address is npittman, P-I-T-M-A-N, at unitela.com. You can also go to the Unite LA website, unitela.com, and there's information right on the front page. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you, Tim. I know that all of us have so much to publicly say just from our experiences with Alma. And I'll just also add just that, she was a personal friend of mine. I learned a lot about workforce from her. And, I'm just incredibly saddened by this, but I think that the Unite LA's efforts, I think, are very appropriate. I think that's exactly the kinds of things that are aligned with the spirit of Alma, Dr. Alma Salazar. And so our love goes out to her family and everyone who's come in contact with her. Thank you, Tim, for sharing that. So we're going to move forward with the agenda, and I'm going to share some notes just in general. These are just a standard protocol that I know many of you are familiar with virtual meetings and our last meeting. So this meeting is being conducted on the Zoom platform. Only executive committee members and staff are in the formal Zoom meeting itself. The general public is viewing our meeting via live stream on the CWDB YouTube page. Links to the YouTube page, as well as the meeting packet, are on our website, cwdb.ca.gov, under the State Board Meetings and Archives section. A recording of this meeting is also going to stay on that same YouTube page. I also just want to note that there is a slight delay between the Zoom meeting and the live stream. It's approximately 20 to 30-second delay. We do want to open up formally our public comments now, and we can accept them via email. The email address is boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov. Again, it is boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov. I'm going to announce when the public comment period is closed, and am mindful to also allow extra time for emails to come through. All emails will be read aloud during the public comments period which will also be included formally in our meeting minutes. The first public comment is on the one action item, approval of the March 4 meeting summary. Other public comments will be read at the end of the meeting. I will get to that in a moment. Executive members will be on mute, and I'm happy to recognize anybody who wishes to speak. If you could please type speak into the chat function in the Zoom, and I'll be happy to recognize speakers. You can also type in your questions if you feel like that's a more efficient way to convey your inquiries. And I do want to note that anything typed in the Zoom chat box, even if you think that it's being privately shared to an individual member as opposed to the general public, will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. So at this point, we are going to look at taking action on the meeting summary minutes from March 4th. I do want to note that because this was unintentionally not put on the agenda, I think we'll have to actually make a motion to amend the agenda to formally add this. And so the summary is in the packet, and we need 2/3 vote in order to amend the agenda. So I'm happy to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to amend the agenda. Angelo.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Neil and Bruce. So Tim, can we do it by acclamation, or do we need to do a roll call? If we could unmute Tim Rainey, please.
Sorry, I got to get used to the mute, unmute. We can do it by acclamation.
Okay. All in favor, please say
Aye.
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 Is there any abstentions or nays? Okay, so the agenda has been formally, the item has been placed on the agenda. Now we can take another motion to approve the meeting summary of March 4th.
Move approval.
Motion by Jamil,
Second.
second John. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, any abstentions or nays? Okay, so it passes unanimously. I'm going to now read the comment we got. It was this is going to seem very innocuous. It's just a logistical question, but we have to read it based on our policies. So the email is for Tim. I do need to read this email, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The email is from Caroline Kelvin from Political Solutions, LLC. Greetings. I was hoping to get a recording of tomorrow's event. Will that be available to forward? If so, please forward to me. Hi, Caroline. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded on the California Workforce Development Board's YouTube page with the link provided to the YouTube page. And it was also replied by our staff. Hi, Clement and Curtis. I replied to this public comment email and wanted you to be aware. I'm not sure if you need to read this today or not. Jeff Jacobstein. Curtis replied, I told them that this does have to be read during public comment as it was received in our inbox. The answer is also provided below, is that recording of the meeting will be live. So thank you. If we could please have everyone else muted who's not speaking. Thank you. Okay, so that concludes our public comment on that section. Our next agenda item is staff update. Curtis, if you could please share with us some staff changes recently to our Workforce Development Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, members of the Executive Committee. Curtis Natsana with the Workforce Development Board. Wanted to share a couple of staff updates that are notable at the CWDB. I'll start first with a couple of departures from our organization. First is tomorrow is Dan Rounds, who serves as our policy director, has been with the state board for the last 6 years. Dan's last day is tomorrow. Dan will be returning to the state Senate in the Senate Office of Research, covering workforce development and governmental organization issues. So he'll still be in the workforce field, thankfully, I think for all of us, but he will be working in the state Senate. And I believe Dan, Tim, if you want to, I think you had some things to say, and I believe Dan has joined us this morning also for this meeting.
Thanks, Curtis. Yeah, and he's wearing the handlebar mustache just for this purpose, I think. Dan has, I don't know where to start. It's kind of an emotional thing. It's an emotional meeting. Dan and I have worked together for a long time. I met him when he was actually at the Senate Office of Research, and we did a project together. I was at the California Labor Federation. He was at SOR, that looked at how much WIA formula dollars, WIA at the time, Workforce Investment Act funding, was spent on training services. So Dan and I collaborated with the California Manufacturing Technology Association, the California Labor Fed, and the State Building Trades Council to push a piece of legislation that would require local formula investment in job training. Bruce remembers this well. It was quite a ride. It was a lot of fun. Got to know Dan very well. When I moved to the state board about a year after I moved over, I managed to coax Dan over to the state workforce board. And I think as all of you have witnessed, he's an incredible mind. He has this unique understanding both of policy, workforce policy, but also how to align policy work with research and how to really connect those two. We like to say that we're running a think do tank at the State Workforce Development Board. Praxis, you can't just sort of make up ideas. You have to see if they work in the real world and learn from that work. And I credit Dan with a great deal as the reason why we've been as successful as you and us have been successful over the last close to a decade since I've been at the state board. I don't know what else to say. I'm happy for him. We're happy for him. The staff, we all wish him the absolute best, and wanted to take this opportunity to invite you also to wish Dan the best.
I'll say
go
something.
ahead.
Dan, it's been great working with you. I concur with Tim, and just listen at how you're methodical about the strategy and always seen you as like a scientist of workforce. And it's just been cool, to be a part of the work with you. And I wish you success in the future. And I'm assuming Tim will keep us connected and be able to continue to work together. But all the best to you.
Thank you, Joseph. John Brower.
Yeah, best of luck, Dan. I'm hoping that we get to work with you in your new role, in your old role, if you will, in that. I think the other piece that may come to fruition after you're gone, actually, maybe the Cal Skills piece that I know you've been putting together with Tim and the other folks there. So Tim, I hope you got him on warranty to come back and if something's not working, to help fix that piece. But best of luck to you, brother, and look forward to still seeing you around. Take care.
Thank you. Dan, do you want to say anything before?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. I'll keep it short because usually I've been through this conversation a few times now, and I usually start crying, so I don't want to go through that again. But I want to thank you all for all the work that you do. It's really important. I think the long-term vision of the board and the board's members and its staff, it's all the way down from the rank and file up through the executive team, is consistent with the governor's vision of building a shared prosperity in California for all. We have a very dynamic economy in California. we create tremendous amounts of wealth. Yet at the same time, there are millions of people in the state of California who are not fully benefiting from the economic dynamism of the state. And, you know, I see the mission of the board as being one, as expanding the circle of people who are participating in the state's economy through the high road vision and through, you know, strategic investments and innovative grant programs. So it's been a real privilege to work for the board and under the direction of labor agency for 2 administrations now. My work in this policy area is going to continue. I look forward to working with all of you in the future. I'll be just across the street at the Senate Office of Research, which is where I essentially cut my teeth on workforce policy before I came to work for the executive branch. So it's been a real privilege working with all of you, and you know, thank you, Tim, for pushing the system in the way that you do, and thank you all for the work that you do. And I'll just leave it at that, and say that it's not goodbye; it's see you later. We'll be still working in the same policy space. So thank you again for the work that you all do.
Thank you, Dan. And we know, you know, anyone who's come across you or had any conversations about workforce knows just your level of detail and intelligence on these matters, and especially with things with like data. But I think your passion, you know, just from a value standpoint, really stands out. And like you said, we'll be continuing to work in this capacity of yours, which is going to be extremely important moving forward with the governor's agenda. So thank you again for your service.
I think workforce scientist is going to stick. That describes it.
All right, we have a couple of more staff updates that I wanted to share with the exec committee. The other departure is Sydney Armendariz, who leads our corrections workforce partnership team. Sydney has accepted a promotional opportunity with the Department of Public Health, and she will be their new chief of maternal and infant programs over there. So congratulations to Sydney. In terms of new staff or changes, Marissa Clark, who all of you know is our state plan and policy manager, is temporarily acting as the Deputy Director for Policy Research and Legislation in Dan's absence. We are advertising to refill that position. Also wanted to share that Sandra Hamame, who's also with the State Plan and Policy team, worked with a lot of you on state partnerships, has accepted a promotion to be our new High Roads Field Manager, managing the field team under Aida Cardenas, our Deputy Director for the field branch, High Road Field Branch. And we've also filled 5 of the 6 positions in our new High Road Field Branch in that unit, and we have those specialists in place. Rafael Aguilera is a climate specialist, came from the P2E field team. Zach Liu is another new climate specialist on the team. Stephanie Tsai is another climate specialist on that team. Mark Cowan is an industry partnerships, industry engagement specialist on that team. And Tanya Burke is the 5th and newest industry engagement specialist on our High Road Field team. We've also worked to build out a stellar research team. So in addition to Dr. Phyllis Jeffrey, who's working primarily on the CalSkills project and came from UC Davis, we also recently have Dr. Travis Baker, who was a professor at the UC Sacramento, UC Center here in Sacramento, join our research team, and Dr. Paige Mustaine, who recently finished her PhD at Oxford, has joined our research team. So we have some very welcomed new additions here at the State Board. Look forward to providing good work and highly skilled research and evaluation and high road field work for the system moving forward.
Thank you for those updates, Curtis, and congratulations to everybody who's joining our team, as well as people that are transitioning into new roles. Thank you, Curtis. Our next agenda item is local and Regional Plan update. So our Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act requires the creation of a regional and local plan every 4 years. These must be consistent with the visions and goals of our state plan. Our Workforce Development Board issued a draft directive that outlines the criteria that regional and local plans must address. Marissa, if you could please share with us a brief update.
Of course. Good morning. So as was mentioned, the regional and local plan development process is very similar to the state plan development process, where a new strategic plan has to be created every 4 years, and then there's a modification or an update resubmitted every 2 years. And so the purpose of the regional plan is to kind of high level articulate how the regional planning units will be intentional around working together to do industry engagement, driving outcomes across their jurisdictions, and expanding access to career pathways, especially for underserved communities. And then the local plans drill down a little bit more by kind of creating an opportunity for an action plan of how they'll connect with their local partners to operationalize the roadmap that's laid out in the regional plan, and how individuals will actually access those services through the America's Job Centers of California system or through their partners' systems. So while it does outline certain criteria we had to include in the rubric, it does give us some amount of flexibility to tweak the criteria based on state priorities and make sure it's in alignment with the state plan, as was mentioned. So as we were drafting it with everything going on, we tried to keep the rubric as simple as possible by trying to build the questions around work that had already been done up until this point. So it's really a continuation of the previous plans, while still making sure it aligned with those overarching 3 policy objectives around fostering demand-driven skills attainment, enabling upward mobility, and aligning, coordinating, and integrating programs. So the draft directive outlining all those requirements was posted for a 30-day public comment period. That public comment period will be ending this Monday, October 16th. And that comment period is open to anyone and everyone to submit comments, obviously local boards, but as well as our local partners, employers, community-based organizations, anyone that interacts with the system who has thoughts on kind of what should be addressed in the plan. And in addition to the formal public comment period, we also worked with local boards to do kind of a stakeholder input session and provided an advanced copy of the draft directive. And CWA, the Workforce Association, helped facilitate a conversation based on that directive: what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be clarified. And that was really, really helpful for us in kind of getting that real-time feedback. So based on the feedback we got from the input session, as well as the formal public comment, we will, once it closes for public comment on Monday, we'll make all appropriate adjustments based on that feedback and then issue a final directive. And as of now, the deadline for the regional and local plans will be April 30th, which gives us then a month or 2 to turn around and kind of review, score, and approve or deny those plans before they go into effect July 1, 2021. So that's a quick overview. I'm happy to answer any questions about specifics if anyone has them.
Thank you, Marissa. Does anybody have any questions? And while I'm asking that, Curtis, if you could please provide an email to our board regarding the new staff updates that you shared, that would be helpful at the request of Bob Redlow, please.
Sure, I'll send out an email to the board.
Thank
or
you.
to the exec committee and the full board.
Could we please have everyone muted that's not speaking? Okay, we're gonna now move on. Before I get to the next agenda item, I wanna toss it back to Tim as we have some updates regarding from an agency perspective, including the employment training panel.
You probably have heard, or maybe haven't heard, there's a new director of the employment training panel appointed by Governor Newsom, Reg Javier. We've started conversations with Reg about how to better align the employment training panel with the state board's work, and we're close partnerships. This really, I think, connects well with Marissa's work around coordination among agencies at the state level around the state plan and also the regional and local planning. It is a new opportunity because Reg is brand new. As you probably also know, the previous director of ETP is now the Undersecretary of Labor, Stuart Knox, who I call Under Stewie, because he's a good friend. So we are excited that Reg is there. We're going to be working closely with him. We are going to do everything we can to make that alignment work, not just with ETP, but also the Division of Apprenticeship Standards and our close partner, the Employment Development Department, and try to get as close as we can of the kind of alignment that we expected to achieve through the new department that we've talked with you guys about several times, Department of Better Jobs and Higher Wages. The Secretary is still pushing the new department. As you know, it didn't happen in this last legislative session, but our expectation, the Secretary's expectation, is that it will occur. But we're going to do everything we can short of that to make the alignment real across our departments inside the agency.
Thank you for that update, Tim. And I would just add also that Reg Javier, he transitioned from San Bernardino County Economic Development Agency, where his responsibilities included the Workforce Development Department there. So he's very familiar with our system and the possibilities of collaboration. Moving on to the next agenda item, COVID-19 workforce responses update. Labor agency is deeply involved in COVID response and recovery activities. Ab398, our former colleague and now Deputy Secretary at the Labor Agency, Jaime Gutierrez from EDD, are going to update us on some of those activities. And I also will want to quickly recognize our close partners on the ground, which includes our 45 local workforce boards and all of their tremendous efforts. So we'll start with Abby, please.
Be good for me to unmute. Thank you, Angela. And it's really great to be back at the table in a different role. But as I think you all know, I joined the Labor Agency in early January, really hired to support the Future of Work Commission and do longer term policy and program planning around future of work. And then COVID hit. And with COVID, the economic collapse. And so, you know, I've really been working hard and in very close partnership with many of you, and really joined at the hip with Tim, and just so, you know, deeply value Tim's vision and leadership around this, but working in a few areas I can describe briefly to really look at ways to respond to the state's emergency response through hiring laid off workers. We pulled together one of the state's task forces around COVID response, the Workforce Transition Task Force, really an interagency group continuing to meet weekly. And as we find out about different hiring needs, we've worked to fill those needs and get laid off workers hired. So as an example, worked with Department of Social Services on Project Room Key to get people in our communities hired for those expanded services to people struggling with homelessness. Worked very closely with Tim and his team with the Hospitality Training Academy in LA with One Fair Wage on hotel and restaurant community feeding programs, which leveraged public funding, primarily dislocated worker grant funding, as well as state procurement, to turn both hotel and restaurant kitchens into community kitchens and bring back laid off hotel and restaurant workers. We've worked with our partners on the ground at about 15 local boards to support staffing at the food banks, which have seen across the state increases in demand of up to 6 times the usual demand. At the same time, their usual volunteers are sheltering in place and not going in to volunteer. And so we've been able to leverage dislocated worker dollars and get over 300 laid off workers subsidized in jobs to serve people in those food banks. We've worked with EDD to help broaden its recruitment pool for the unemployment insurance claims officers, it's been hiring and have done some work really in partnership with many of the local boards on direct hiring in the, in the public sector with the US Postal Service and with a couple of private sector employers doing PPE testing and currently with Tesla around the state. Another really deeper area of involvement for us has been around contact tracing, working since April with the Department of Public Health to leverage dollars, federal dollars, both through the CARES Act and FEMA, to expand the hiring and deployment of contact tracers at the local level in the counties, to really contain the transmission of COVID and be a really great place for laid off workers from service industries, from including hotel, restaurant, hospitality, to take their skills in customer service and problem solving and establishing relationship and put those to work as contact tracers. I wish I could say that the progress was moving as quickly as we want to, and Diane Factor, who's on this call, has been a really close partner in trying to figure that out, but I think we're seeing some small signs of progress. I know Merced County is a model, even though the scale is small, in getting laid off workers, Spanish speakers, into those roles at the county. We've also been working on some systems change, which I think will have long-term effects. Trying to get in and influence procurement contracts, worked with our legal team at Labor to make sure that the contracts to some of the states, for some of the states' procurement around testing, around other COVID-related expenses, included language around fair wages, around compliance with labor standards, and inserted language about preferences for hiring laid off workers. We're also able to get similar language into transmittal letters that the Department of Public Health sent to the counties as it was allocating CARES Act dollars for COVID-related services, which can include contact tracing. Have also started some exciting work and really coming out of the workforce task force that we have in a small working group with folks from both the state library system, our agency, and local partners in the libraries and the workforce boards in San Diego and Kern County, really looking at the very complementary resources that the library system and the boards have to offer, and looking at ways that we can leverage those to better serve customers and just better stretch our resources. So looking at some demonstration funding at a smaller scale to just really replicate what's been very successful in Kern and San Diego and replicate that around the state. Have also been working in partnership, and just thank you, Sheni and Pradeep, with our partners at the community colleges and the Department of Education, to look at ways that we can better leverage the education system's resources for the training and employment of English language learners, of displaced workers, in many ways. So, just looking at ways of doing that more. And just a couple of things on recovery planning, and I'm zipping through to be respectful of time, and would just be delighted to go into more detail on any of this. But just in terms of the labor agency itself, one of our priorities right now has been Secretary Sue is a co-chair of the Economic Equity and Workforce Transition Subcommittee of the Governor's Recovery Task Force. And there have been some exciting projects coming out of there that we are following through with that are really influencing some of our thinking. And increasingly, I see the labor agency will center young adults as a priority, just really in recognition of the disparate impact of COVID and the economic crisis on young people. We will work in partnership in a public-private partnership with private philanthropy and some selected community colleges on a leadership corps, which is in development, where, and thank you, Jaime, for your really innovative thinking around this, really look at some of the dollars that, some of the Wagner-Pizer dollars that have been spent in the Youth Employment Opportunity Program to support some school-related employment in pilot sites, probably 5 to start out around the state, connected with selected community colleges to help really train a workforce to go into leadership roles in social change organizations, looking at labor market demand there as the current generation of leadership moves into retirement, and building on the passion of young people around social justice, racial justice right now. So that's very much in development, something we're thinking about. Also thinking about ways that we can serve more young people in our system and serve them better, and looking at some innovative ways to leverage some of the dislocated worker dollars and other dollars. Also, moving forward with a project I think some of you may know about that came out of the task force, but it has its own momentum now, is a partnership developing with the California Dental Association, which really focused in more of the urban areas of the state, are seeing pretty dire shortages as the dental sector bounces back for dental assistants, and looking at a statewide coordinated partnership, possibly in an apprenticeship model, to take people really with no experience to registered dental assistant licensure and roles within about 18 months, with wages that can be $25, $30 an hour. Let me just pause there, but I think that gives you a snapshot of some of the different projects we've been doing, really all just, working from demand, working for, just finding opportunities to get the millions of laid off Californians back to work. So let me pause. Tim, anything you want to add? You've been such a close partner in all of this, and happy to answer any questions.
No, that's awesome, Abby. Delighted and honored to be working with you at the Labor Agency. It's been an amazing partnership, and so glad I was going to say you're in Sacramento, but you're not in Sacramento technically.
We're all kind of in Sacramento, right?
We're all in Sacramento.
Just a quick question or comment.
Yeah, I have a question too.
We're going to start with John, please. John Brower.
Abby, I wanted to make sure I heard you right. Did you say the state is doing something with Tesla? And if so, could you explain what that is?
Sure. Got a call from, and Tim, you can weigh in on this as well, for some of its residential work, wanting to hire entry-level installers, roofers, and electricians. And Tim is pulled in to the work around electricians and trying to get them to work with the IBEW training pipeline.
Okay,
okay. Add a little bit.
My bells and whistles are going off here.
Of course. Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
So we, John, are, as you know, that WIOA dollars, because of state legislation, if it's spent on construction, has to align directly with state-approved apprenticeship programs and has to use the MC3 curriculum.
Right. We've got SB 554, and all of that is part of your consideration.
That's right. Yeah, that's correct. And it's also built into the SB1 funding, the same language. So that's the policy of the state board too. It's in the state plan. So what we did was reach out to local workforce development boards, and they're all completely aware of that. So the conversation may turn to, as Abby was saying, to partnerships with local building trades councils, which would be fascinating to me, and possibly directly with IBEW. So this is, not an easy bridge to cross necessarily, but it's interesting, and we're hopeful that something actually might come out of this in a positive way.
I'm hoping that the intersection is to try and get them to work with your with the building trades councils and with your high road construction career funded
right.
entities.
That's
Is
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Thank you.
That's what Abby and me are aiming for.
Okay.
Abby and I.
Thank you, John. Bob?
Thanks. That was a great report, Abby, and as always appreciate all the work that you do. Just a comment, the social and the work you're doing on social inequities is just amazing, particularly in Contra Costa County, West Contra Costa. We've experienced just a huge amount of COVID related activities and problems with our Latino population. It's a population that's been extraordinarily hit, particularly in the workforce. I just wanted to know if you're doing anything special for the Latino population in the work that you were talking about that, will help us with the workforce problems that have resulted now and are going to result down the road.
Well, I think I could have been, more clear up front, but everything is really centering on an equity agenda, and really looking at the, disparate, unfair impact on communities of color, both Black and Brown. And I think contact tracing is really a place to, create opportunities. And I know you've been close to this as well, for people with language skills, people who come from the communities most affected, to get jobs now, and ideally to get them on a career pathway for other roles, which could be public health, could be, other allied health, could even be, further along on a customer support role.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Carol?
Yeah, and another thanks to Abby for just your hard work during this time. I'm semi-retired, and I know you were kind of headed in that direction. So I just want to thank you for your public service during this crisis. Really. I guess I had a question and a comment on I didn't hear much mention of unions or the high road training partnership infrastructure that the state has supported. The question is, how much have you been able to leverage that infrastructure, and where do you see, opportunities for leveraging it more, and leveraging the unions more in all this? And then my comment was exciting news about trying to train the next generation of social justice activists. And I would urge you, if there is opportunity, to include or at least use as a partial model our labor summer program that we've had at the Labor Center for 20 years, where we connect classroom learning and field studies to, paid internships, which we're always looking for funding for. So I'll be upfront about that. But I think it's a great model for community colleges too. So I would offer that as an example, and also, the importance of including unions in that social justice target organizations that you're working with.
Great call, Carol. Would love some information on your summer program. Would like to learn more about this. The Work for Leadership Corps is really connected to a national effort to really make this a national program. It is connected to, I think it's the Center for Community Leadership. I may not have that name completely right. That is actually, has national legislation, federal legislation that would be ready to submit depending on which way the election goes in November. And there are similar programs in Minneapolis, in Chicago. I think there was a test at De Anza. Brian Murphy, the former president of De Anza, has really been taking the lead in this in California. The specific selection of community-based sites would be done at the local level, but I think looking at labor as labor unions as a site is a really great call. And just to circle back to your question about HRTP, I really wanted Tim to get the glory for this, but I mean, we've been working really closely on ways to expand HRTP and spent a lot of time over the summer working on a federal grant from the Department of Education, and we're very surprised to be confirmed as one of 8 states around the country getting funded to expand HRTP, the 3 current HRTP projects to rural high COVID impact places, and to launch 2 new ones, one in manufacturing and one in vegetation management. So, always want Tim to get the glory for that, but we worked really, really hard, and I'm just really excited to then be expanding the pool of high road training partnerships.
And
Wonderful, thank you.
We'll cover that on later on the agenda, the Department of Education grant. And Aida will talk about HRTPs later on the agenda as well.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Abby. We're going to move to Jaime now. If you could please share your part of the update. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. And good morning, executive committee members and guests. Thank you for having me and sharing some information with you. My name is Jaime Gutierrez. I'm the chief in the Central Office Workforce Services Division within EDD. I'm going to share some information with you regarding some of the activities that the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, the Employment Development Department, and the State Board have initiated in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'd like to start with WARN notices. So EDD has received 5,194 WARN notices since that pandemic started in March. That have affected 568,423 employees statewide. For comparison, from the prior 8 months prior to the pandemic, so July 1 through February 29th, we had 387 WARN notices that we received, and 37,664 affected employees. So significant difference between the 2 8-month time periods. The workforce community, which obviously includes the local workforce development boards, the Employment Development Department, the California Workforce Development Board, as well as community-based organizations, community colleges, and other local partners, have provided 3,374 rapid response events during the pandemic, which we have received 53,381 attendees to those events. The total number of impacted or affected employees was 247,000, but 53,381 employees attended the rapid response events. I'm sure you're all familiar with the rapid response event, so I won't get into details around that, but happy to answer any questions if you do have it around any of that. Additionally, by comparison, between July 1 of 2019 and February 29th of 2020, during that 8-month period, we had 903 rapid response events, and we had 11,276 participants to those events, attendees. Let's see, we also provided rapid response services and layoff aversion services to employers. We had 4,087 businesses that we provided some service to in rapid response or layoff aversion. Of those, 1,101 businesses received specific layoff aversion assistance, where 2,209 jobs were saved as part of that effort. So that's really good news. All of that during the pandemic. Additionally, between March and April, the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, Employment Development Department, and the California Workforce Development Board approved 25% additional funding to 23 local workforce development boards for a total of $18,600,000. The grants are to serve over 3,000 dislocated workers within those 23 local boards. Again, in April, We also, the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, Employment Development Department, and the California Workforce Development Board announced the Underserved COVID-19 Impacted Individuals Grant, which was awarded to 42 local areas, local workforce development boards, for a total of a little over $10 million. That funding was specifically to provide supportive services, mainly around the necessary equipment for teleworking, computers, internet, et cetera, things like that, as well as housing assistance, utility assistance, childcare assistance, and transportation assistance. Again, that was 10 million in that. Then we also submitted a request, 3 different requests for National Dislocated Worker Grants. The first one was a disaster recovery request. That was for a total of $12 million to provide temporary jobs, which included cleanup, sanitation of public places, spaces, conduct contact tracing, provide humanitarian aid, and provide reemployment services. So that 12 million was for that effort, and that was effective April 10th of this year, and goes through March 31st of 2022. And there were 13 project operators for that particular effort. We also had around the same time period, we also submitted a request, and DOL approved an employment recovery grant request from California, and that was for $11.6 million. And that was provided to 28 project operators, primarily local workforce development boards. That was to serve almost 3,000 participants. Again, the intent is training. This one is particularly training based, and to provide additional supportive services. The time frame for that is also the same, April 10th through March 31st of 2022. And then finally, we recently, earlier this month, submitted the airline industry employment recovery request to Department of Labor. This is specifically to help individuals in the airline impacted by the airline industry layoffs. We requested $18 million, and we are currently waiting for approval from Department of Labor on that particular request. That is actually going to provide service to approximately 3,800 participants, and it is going to be available to 6 project operators that have been identified. So that is my update on all of the activities that we've got going on. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
Thank you, Jaime. Any questions for Jaime? Okay, thank you so much for that update. We're moving on to our next agenda item, which is the AB398 report, which was recently submitted to the legislature. At our board meeting in July, we covered in detail about our agency's AB398 report. You'll recall that it was a part of the extension of the cap and trade in 2017. This legislation was authored by Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, and it required our agency to analyze the impacts of climate on jobs and workers. Our agency commissioned the UC Berkeley Labor Center. Carol Zabin was very instrumental in involvement with that to produce the report. In early September, the final product was formally submitted to the legislature. I want to thank Carol, our colleague, and who was the lead from UC Berkeley Center for that study. Our staff member, Shreyas Jatkar, will provide a brief status update overall. Shreyas?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. Baruch mentioned, we submitted the report September 3rd to the legislature. We issued a press release as well. I will share a couple of the media hits in the chat here so that folks can take a look. We had a handful of stories that came out about the report. Not a ton, but of course, as folks know, we're competing against some other very pressing issues that the state is facing, the epic wildfires, pandemic and the cratering of the economy, as well as continued coverage of systemic racism in our society, that all are deserving of attention. And I think even if we didn't have those other big stories in the news, putting out a press release about a brand new report, as exciting and informative and useful as it is not necessarily the most press-worthy kind of story. Nonetheless, again, I'll share some of those media hits in the chat function so folks can take a look. We also did a social media push that the Berkeley Labor Center really led. I don't have the results of that in terms of the number of tweets and resharing of those tweets, things like that, but I will have those results for the full board meeting in a couple of weeks. I do want to share that we briefed key legislative staff with Carol's help, who presented on the report, and we were there to also answer questions. We got a really warm reception to the findings and the recommendations in the report. A lot of support to help us sort of see those recommendations through. And in fact, this afternoon, we have a follow-up call with key staff in the Assembly, in the Speaker's office, and certain ledge committees who are interested in really, again, supporting implementation of the report. So a couple other things to mention about this. One is we did go over this at the July meeting, but I'll just recap very quickly that we have essentially a three-step or three-phase implementation plan to carry out the recommendations of this report. We group them into sort of things on the demand side around job quality, so really maximizing the public benefits of climate investments. Number two is investing in the high road workforce development infrastructure. And three is promoting regional partnerships to support the transition to a carbon neutral economy. The shorthand for that is promoting just transition, but it's such a loaded term that it's important and perhaps becoming overused, that it's important to be clear what we're referring to. And this is really about helping regions of the state diversify their local economies, create quality jobs so that as certain industries decline, in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, there are actually good jobs to transition people into. So that's our three-point implementation plan. Lastly, I'll just add that while we didn't get a ton of press attention, very significant that the report was referenced and mentioned in the governor's executive order that Tim, I think, or somebody else will go over on the agenda here in just a little bit. And also, lastly, we're gonna also cover Assembly Bill 639 that was signed into law. That's primarily about seaports, and again, others will talk about that piece of legislation. In that law, it does require us to provide an update to the legislature on our implementation of the Ab398 report by December 2022. So we have ample time to get some work going on the ground so that when we show up in a year or two, we'll have some good stuff to report to the legislature. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions folks may have.
Thank you, Shreyas. And Tim will be speaking more specifically about that executive order shortly. Before we go to question, Carol, is there anything you want to add? Oh, so Carol's comment is just if we could please share the op-ed by State Senator Maria Elena Durazo on the 398 report. So
yeah, that'd be great. I have another update coming up, and then I'll send things in the chat.
Thank you, Shreyas. Joseph.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a plug for the report coming out. I shared it internally with the company, and Carol, we invited at Edison, Kate Gordon, the director of the Governor's Office of Research and Planning. She's also the senior advisor on climate. She's going to be doing a food for thought at our company this month, and she's going to talk about the report, and she's going to reference the whole idea of the just transition. And as we as a company think about electrifying the transportation sector and buildings and all of those different things, we're just really talking about the impacts on jobs and what we can do to invest more in apprenticeships and just, our whole role in making sure that there are job opportunities. So we're really excited that you guys put that information out and it's being shared broadly.
Excellent.
I like the comments from the background, Joseph. Those were cool.
Thank you, Joseph. And with the scoping plan, the utilities and the investor-owned utilities are an important component of the overall effort. So thank you for your leadership there, and thank you, Shreyas. We're going to be circling back with you actually next. Also, our next agenda item is the MOU with the California Public Utilities Commission, the CPUC. A key strategy for advancing the high road vision called for in that report, as I just mentioned, is the state workforce plan, building partnerships with agencies responsible for major climate policies and programs. Our agency recently signed an MOU with the Public Utilities Commission, and as many of you know, the CPUC oversees billions of dollars in investments annually in clean energy and clean transportation. Shreyas, if you could please provide more details.
Yeah, so this is really, I think, a very exciting and relatively new area of work for the State Workforce Board. And really, I think, to be honest, for the state, I think we actually have a chance for this effort to become a model of interagency collaboration here in California and quite honestly, nationwide. So because this is kind of new and sort of different work than we've done before, I just wanted to start with a brief explanation about sort of the rationale, like why we've even entered into this MOU with the Public Utilities Commission. As mentioned, this really is a key strategy for advancing our high road vision for the economy and workforce here in California. One of the key strategies to do that, to advance that vision and to really operationalize the principles of the high road, equity, climate, job quality, and worker voice. One key strategy is making sure that we're ensuring public benefits from our state climate investments. And when we put out funding, no matter who it is, any entity that puts out funding has tremendous leverage to shape the outcomes of that funding. For us, of course, we're most interested in shaping the labor market outcomes. We want to make sure that our climate investments are creating good quality jobs and they're creating greater access to those jobs for disadvantaged populations. And so, again, great opportunity to impact job quality and job access. And also as state government, as these are funds that the state administers or oversees, this is a unique role for state government to really, again, help shape job quality and job access. And again, as mentioned, this is really an avenue for operationalizing our high road vision. Also, the sort of mandates that the governor has put into recent executive orders about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions more quickly to avert climate catastrophe, while at the same time building a sustainable and inclusive economy. So how we do this is basically partnering with other state agencies, providing them with advice and recommendations to make improvements to their funding programs. We're primarily working with those agencies that have responsibility for major climate policies and programs. So that's the Public Utilities Commission that we're talking about right now. It's also the Energy Commission, as well as the California Air Resources Board. And of course, there are many others, but those are the big three in my mind when it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions in California from the energy and transportation sectors, which are our biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions. So here, really, the primary focus is not necessarily training, but more on the demand side of the labor market. Again, we're really thinking about how do we design these investments in clean energy and transportation sustainability so they result in good jobs and greater access to them. And of course, we're also trying to identify ways to link workforce development efforts, either overseen or directly funded by these other state agencies with our high road vision broadly, as well as specifically our high road initiatives and projects wherever those linkages make sense. So to get very specific, we have now formalized a partnership with the California Public Utilities Commission, the CPUC, which among other things regulates the three, well, there's more than three, but there are three big investor-owned utilities in the state, SoCal Edison, Pacific Gas and Electric, and San Diego Gas and Electric. And as mentioned, the PUC and these utilities, they spend annually billions of dollars in clean energy and transportation sustainability projects. So our scope of work here is to provide advice and recommendations to the PUC staff on ways to integrate job quality measures, whether that's wage and benefit standards, advising on the different types of clean energy or transportation projects. There's a great difference between investing in the residential versus the commercial sectors of the building industry. And we're trying to make those improvements, in either their funding programs, primarily their funding programs, also, the various planning documents that the PUC puts out, and any policy that they put out as well. And in terms of the scope of work, very clearly it's about energy and transportation. Just to say a little bit more, the PUC has for years, if not decades, had programs they've overseen in energy efficiency, renewable energy. What's more new there is what's called building decarbonization, getting off of natural gas and moving to electrify all buildings. And so that's still within energy, still within clean energy, but sort of a newer area of focus. And then vegetation management. As we know from the wildfires, having clearer vegetation, clearing the vegetation in and around utility infrastructure is really important to do as much as we can to prevent wildfires and reduce the impact of them when they do occur. So that's all on the energy side. On transportation, the state has been making major investments to electrify transportation. And so really this looks like investing in the infrastructure for recharging battery electric vehicles. So those are kind of the areas of our work. This really builds on some past efforts that we've been doing for a number of years, providing this kind of advice and recommendations informally. And lastly, I'll just say that the MOU itself is actually a very specific action item that came out of the PUC's Environmental and Social Justice Action Plan that they put out last year. We also highlight this in our state workforce plan that we just put out this year. So a lot of great synergy, a lot of great common interest. Next step is to have a call with our respective leaderships and identify key priorities and actually begin the work. And so we'll look to start that up, and maybe we'll have a little bit more to share at the full board meeting in a couple of weeks. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Shreyas. And if you could please share a copy of the agreement for our reference also. And Bob has a question.
Thanks. Just quickly, I know we have a pretty large agenda, but in the Bay Area, there's a lot of work. This is not my expertise, but there's a lot of work in the transportation area, and there's a lot of opportunity in light rail, electric light rail, between the Bay Area and Fresno and other places in the state. And they're trying to tie into the new infrastructure bill that's floating around Congress. It's got bipartisan support. And depending on how we play our cards, I think in California, there's billions of dollars that may be available for us. And we have an opportunity to have a lot of jobs and produce light rail, particularly around the Bay Area. Does your group tie into that? I just didn't quite understand the connection. And is there a relationship between what's going on there and what you're talking about?
I think there's definitely a relationship. It's not necessarily the scope of work unless the Public Utility Commission oversees those investments that you're referring to. But I imagine the things you're talking about are more local transit agencies and maybe the high-speed rail authority. So other entities that have sort of the control and the sort of authority. But it's absolutely related, and I'm just highlighting this one piece of work with the PUC. We've been talking with the Transportation Agency, we've been working with Department of General Services and others on exactly this stuff. So yeah, I mean, perhaps some more follow-up, we can help identify like where there are, you know, key places to intervene. But I think, so not, but and yes, there's a lot more we could do. Just as an example, you know, we tried to get the Department of General Services to set some job quality and job access standards when they put out a master procurement for zero emission transit buses. It unfortunately didn't go through at the last minute, but that would have really ensured that when public transit agencies are buying these new zero emission transit buses, that the manufacturing jobs here in California, or really any place where those buses are being made, are good quality jobs and people have access to them through good career pathways. The same thing actually was done for high-speed rail for those trains. And there's examples like that throughout the state, highlighted in the 398 report. So there's a lot to build on, and I think a lot of great possibilities.
And just to add to that, that was a great presentation. Bob, we have high road training partnerships in transit. So as transit agencies have to, or they're required to move to all zero emission fleets, we're working with the California Transit Workers. Did I get that right, John? CTW, transit, whatever the hell we call it.
California
It's a works. It's a statewide push around high road in transit, both maintenance and mechanics and operations. We also have high road construction careers, a partnership in every corner of the state now that we've driven with Prop 39 and SB1 money, and soon greenhouse gas reduction funds, that as we build infrastructure in the state, and if there's a big federal push around infrastructure development, we're going to have a way of building equity and access to some of the best blue collar jobs that exist. And as Shreyas pointed out, and I think we'll touch on this, Aida will maybe in her presentation, her update, working with zero emission bus manufacturers in the state and working to build high road training partnerships with those. There are 3 big ones in the state. I think there are more, but we're in discussions with all 3 directly to see if we can build a high road training partnership. So the high road work, kind of getting back to Carol's comment, is front and center, I think, in all of the recovery efforts, in addition to our move to a low carbon economy, future economy, that the governor is really pushing.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Bob. Shreyas, is there anyone else staffing this besides you on the implementation of this MOU?
Just me for now. I'll be sure to pull in Tim and others here at the board on occasion. But I think the day-to-day is going to be just myself on the CWDB side. And I'll just say real quickly that mainly the conversation has been with commissioner staff as we actually get into the work. When it comes to sort of rolling up our sleeves, you know, there's going to be program staff in the energy division at the PUC that I'll work more closely with. But the PUC commissioners, Martha Guzman Aceves and Commissioner Cliff Reckshoff and their staff have been our primary contacts to date.
Thank you.
Look at this. Sorry, Angela. Real quick, this is central to your vision as laid out in the state strategic plan and the work we've been doing for a while, driving the demand side. Because we can train people till we're blue in the face, and it doesn't mean people are going to get access to good quality jobs that can support families. So we've been focusing on the demand side, and Shreyas's work is, and what Abby talked about also is aligning with state agencies that are, and using the purchasing power of government to drive job quality. Because at the end of the day, there are more people looking for good quality jobs than there are good quality jobs. So for our training and education work to be successful in terms of equity achieving greater equity, we have to drive the demand side. We have to drive on the job side. And this is shaping markets. Yeah, of course it is. But these are already heavily regulated industries. So it's not like government coming in and meddling in free markets. We're just remeddling. Is that a term?
Thank you, Tim. Carol, you had a short comment?
Carol, you may be talking through your mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to also point out an important legislative victory that hasn't gotten much attention, AB 841, that for the first time requires a statewide skill standard for the installation of electric vehicle infrastructure investments, charging stations, and it's the EVITP, which was developed by IBEW and NECA, the Electrical Contractors Association. That was a recommendation in the 398 report. And it's just an example how of one more way to encourage the demand side. And so I think this work with the agencies is amazing, and the legislature seems pretty aligned with these ideas. So I do think we have a big opportunity to do the detailed work that's going to be needed on the demand side.
Thanks, Carol. I know Aida's got to be chomping at the bit to get to her presentation because I think the plug-in infrastructure is part of that. I'm not sure if she was going to mention that in hers, but we want to boogie to get to Aida because we're going to steal her thunder entirely before we get there.
Thank you, Carol. That's duly noted, and thank you so much again, Chris. This is an extraordinary effort and definitely connects back to AB 398 recommendations. So going along the lines of AB 398, we're going to now go to the next agenda item, which is the governor's recent executive order N7920. Tim, if you could please share the specifics with us.
Yeah, I'll be very fast because I hope that folks had a chance to look at this executive order. It's really unique. The governor's executive order requires that for in-state sales of new passenger cars and trucks, that those vehicles are zero emission by 2035. Medium and heavy duty vehicles will be zero emission by 2045. And I think the drayage trucks, if I remember correctly, Shreyas, the drayage trucks around the ports, that goes into effect in effect actually 2035, so sooner than trucks in general. This is the California Air Resources Board is charged with developing the regulations to make that transition happen. The order also directs the Labor Agency and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, OPR, to develop a just transition roadmap. And that's where it lines up with 398. It actually calls out 398 in the executive order. As you may know, because all of you read all 400 to 600, how many pages is that report? It's a quick read. Angelo read the whole report over coffee, like 160 cups of it, I think, but he got through it. The chapter 4 of that report provides a broad just transition policy framework. And the intent of just transition, if it's a new concept to you, we've talked about it before, is not about just assisting dislocated workers to find new jobs. It's much deeper than that, and it's much more complicated. It's an intensive community, industry, union engagement, buy-in, planning, and implementation process that can take months, years, in some cases decades to really pull off. It's about transitioning and rebuilding a local and regional economy toward quality jobs and climate resiliency, with a focus on diversifying those regional economies that are resource-intensive areas. So helping them shift to new opportunities, a new economy where there are good quality jobs. The State Workforce Board is working with Labor Agency and OPR on a community-led process in Kern County. We're also working on a high road project using actually a couple around just transition using the greenhouse gas reduction funds. One will be specifically in Kern County. And then working with OPR in developing that just transition roadmap. It's actually something we started a bit ago through an interagency agreement between EDD, the State Workforce Development Board and Agency, and OPR to actually start the process going on the development of that roadmap. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Tim. And that executive order got a ton of press nationally, is more specifically about transitioning out gasoline powered cars. But thank you so much for that overall effort. We'll actually go back to you again on the recently signed AB 639 Sabrina Cervantes bill. If you could please do that.
Sure. Recently signed, as Angela said, by the governor. 639 was sponsored by the ILWU, Local 13, which represents the marine cargo handlers at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. That's the San Pedro Bay Port Complex. The Port of LA is, I'm sure most of you know, if not all of you, is the busiest container port in the Western Hemisphere. It's big. It's nearly $3 billion in cargo each year. It's also the ground zero for the future of work because there's a lot of tension around the introduction of automated equipment at the port and replacing people with robots, essentially. So modeled on our current high road training partnership at the Port of Los Angeles, our last year training project, this bill creates a stakeholder process at the LA Long Beach Port Complex that brings together community, organized labor, the industry, the businesses at the port, the cargo companies, and the public and experts. In the center of that process is an industry panel that's made up of representatives from the ILWU, from industry, from the two port authorities are on there. These are all appointed by the Secretary of Labor. And then 2 members are appointed by legislative leadership, one from each branch. The outcomes are to develop findings on the impacts of automation at the port on workers, on the community, and the safety of the work environment, and how to mitigate the job impacts of automation and the transition to zero emission operations. And the intent is really to find a way to get labor and management to sort of move together in a way they haven't in recent history around the introduction and the implementation of automated equipment at the port. It's no small undertaking if you've ever had any exposure to what goes on at the port. The UCLA Labor Center, in collaboration with us and labor agency, will do the stakeholder process work. We are actually going to, they're in the bill 639, so we're going to contract with the Labor Center at UCLA to do much of the work. They're bringing together experts on facilitation, research experts on the LA Port Complex, LA Long Beach Port Complex, and automation. And we're also going to look at ports around the world and how they've managed to, through the introduction and implementation of automation, because it did happen in other parts of the world and in a much different way, where labor and management were very much more aligned around that implementation.
Thank you, Tim. And can you please confirm that, as you alluded to about the Just Transition Plan earlier, that those are going to be locally driven efforts? Joseph has made a comment about the role of local boards that they can play and following infrastructure investments, communities that can be targeted for training and other development opportunities.
Yeah, it's very ground up. It's mobilizing the community to do the planning and solve problems and challenges. It's not a top-down approach at all. In fact, in Kern County, we are working with the local workforce development board there and moved money early on to the Kern County Workforce Development Board, Kern Inyo County, I think that's the Workforce Development Board, to start work with the Community Foundation. So yeah, it's very ground up. It will be.
Thank you for confirming that. Our next agenda item goes back to you again regarding the Education Stabilization Fund grant to the CARES Act, which was alluded to earlier in a pleasant surprise from the federal administration.
Yeah, Abby alluded to this earlier on. It was quite an undertaking and example of the great partnership among the Labor Agency and the Workforce Development Board and EDD, because we collaborated very closely to pull that together. Abby Snay, I will say, and Mike Grissetta, who's at agency also, really led the work, guided us all, pulled us all together, and made this thing happen on time. No small feat. I want to give a shout out to Pradeep, also the Department of Education, and Shani Weber, who had to drop off at the Chancellor's office, for the help and guidance on how to align our high road training projects with colleges and schools. But just a quick background. It was a competitive U.S. Department of Education grant. Only state workforce development boards were allowed to apply. It targeted states that were highly impacted by COVID-19. The RFA specified that applicants articulate an industry-based strategy or a framework around workforce training. So we went with our high road, obviously. That came to us immediately. A framework for building worker community and industry resiliency. That was our approach. So we identified several high road training partnerships in the state that also fit other priorities in the RFA, rural areas, short-term training that leads to credentials, career pathways, and then collaboration with education. In many places, we built that collaboration thanks to our education partners. Those 5 projects very quickly are Fresno-based high road construction careers that covers Fresno, Kings, Tulare, Madera, much of the San Joaquin Valley. We expanded our Bay Area water utilities project with JVS to the Inland Empire. We are creating a new high road training partnership with IBW 1245 around tree contractors, PG&E contractors, to stabilize training related to removing brush around live power lines. As you may know, that a lot of fires in the state were sparked because of brush and trees too close to live power lines. So that's a big undertaking. We're excited about it. Expansion of our California Transit Works high road training partnership to the San Joaquin Valley. There's a real close tie-in with community colleges there. And then a new manufacturing project that's going to be driven largely by John Brower and the California Labor Fed and the WED program. The RFA average grants, I think they were saying $14 to $15 million. We were awarded $14 million. We were only one of 8 states that made the cut. So we're pretty happy about that. We didn't have high hopes that it would happen given timing with an election year in California, but we were successful, and it fits right into our existing work. So it's a good grant to get and great timing.
That's fantastic, Tim. And Carol has a question if any of the just transition work is on refinery closures in the Bay Area.
Not currently. We're working with the steelworkers in Los Angeles who may come back in for greenhouse gas reduction funded HRTP, and Aida can talk more about that. But we will be looking for ways to support other refinery work. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll touch on that so we
Good.
don't confuse people. Yeah.
Right on. We'll wait for Aida.
This is a great transition because we're now going to go into initiative updates. We have several initiatives at the Workforce Development Board, and we'll do a quick round of updates on HRCC, HRTP, regional plan implementation, and the Accelerator plan. So Aida and Joel, if you could please introduce yourself briefly before presenting in terms of your role. And we have links on our website for more information. And we'll start with Aida on the high road construction careers. Aida, you're muted.
Thank you. So I'll be thoughtful of time. So hopefully I won't go too fast, but try to give you an update. So have met most of you. Aida Cardenas, Deputy Director of the High Road Field Branch, also known as the Equity Climate Jobs Branch here at CWDB, overseeing the new field branch. And I'll just add that a lot of just to report back on, from the last board meeting to now, sort of this last quarter, the key focus of my work has been to build out and staff up our field branch, as was mentioned at the beginning of the hour by Curtis. So we're very excited to expand our team that will be supporting the projects, and with that simultaneously working on on the RFA processes for the GGRF resources, and also supporting the current HRTP projects that we already have on board. And so with HRCC, the SB1 grants have been awarded and they're currently in contracting phase so that they can get their resources. We also, as mentioned earlier, hired on our high road construction career specialist, Mark Cowan, and so he's been meeting with the project, started about a month ago. So he's been meeting with the projects to understand the impact of COVID on the projects, what their challenges are, what their needs are, but also what have been some of their successes, so that we can start so we can share across the state some of the best practices and look at ways on how we as a field branch can support those efforts. We're also working on drafting, working very closely with Joelle's team and the program branch in all of this work, but drafting the RFA for the GGRF HRCC, the GGRF money for HRCC.
And Aida, I know that most likely everyone knows the acronyms, but the public might, if someone's watching.
Sure. Yes, so HRCC is our high road construction career. So it's the partnership structure built throughout the state by regions that brings together the different building trades under the Building Trades Council, the different crafts and trades in construction, and partners with community-based organizations and colleges and groups to provide the MC3 pre-apprenticeship program that feeds into different apprenticeships in the different crafts under construction. So it's a way to create equitable access to these quality jobs. So that's sort of the short version of what our high road construction careers are. So those, as Tim had mentioned before, those are at every corner of the state and are currently working, had been working, and were lifted up and established with Prop 39 money, and recently have received awards under SB1. And so they are close to receiving their resources to invest on the ground. And so our programs team and our programs branch is working very closely with them to get all their contracts squared away, and we're getting started on the next round of funding for high road construction careers.
GRF is greenhouse gas reduction funds.
Yes, yeah, also, thank you. I'll talk about it. So again, in this last quarter, we've been focusing on, so the resources that we have to put out the California climate investments through the greenhouse gas reduction funds. There was an adjustment to those resources for this year. So looking at putting out $19 million out in for high road training partnerships, and have been working closely with the Air Resource Board, who are the who oversee those funds, and working with them on what our funding requirements are, and developed an RFA process for using these funds to invest in high road training partnerships in two processes. One is a closed invitation only process, and then an open RFA. So I'll talk about both processes. In the first process, we made an invitation to 19 high road training partnership high road training partnerships to invite to apply for this competitive grant, looking for projects that had already some of the HRTP infrastructure built in, but also had a nexus and an angle to meet the greenhouse gas reduction fund requirements. We are right now, we can't speak to which projects they are because it is a competitive process, but we finalize those recommendations that are being considered. So we hope they will soon be approved so we can make an announcement. But we did make an invitation to 19 projects, expanding from the current 8 that's currently part of the State Workforce Board's portfolio, to expand to different industries in different parts of the state. So we hope to be able to make those announcements soon. We also just recently released the open RFA a week ago Monday, so that folks, and I think Joelle posted that there on that link in the initiatives page. Folks can see the open RFA and the application workshops that'll start this week. To provide information on that funding source. A lot of the field work has been both working in the closed process and getting ready for the open, is spending time in the field. This is not, and when we look, this is not just about providing a training. This is about really creating that infrastructure, that industry-based infrastructure. So we spent quite a bit of time at the same time of simultaneously trying to build a team to do it, spending time in the fields with groups to give them information around the elements of a high road training partnership, and also sharing what the funding source requirements are. So we will actually be doing 3 separate application workshops in collaboration with our programs branch to ensure that any potential applicants have opportunities to engage and to learn about the this RFA. We're breaking into 3 separate workshops. The first one's going to focus on the high road training partnership model. The second workshop will focus on the GGRF requirements. And then the last workshop will be a technical workshop to walk applicants through the actual application, exhibits and forms and documents to make sure that they receive all the support that they need to apply. I will add that in the open process, and I hope I don't complicate this a bit, but in the open process, we also included, in addition to being able to apply for a high road training partnership, an industry-based training partnership, also included the opportunity to apply for regional work, taking an approach to regional work in climate impacted regions. We do have a directive with these resources to look at Kern County. So we did do some groundwork in Kern County and said, we really want this to be a process that has worker voice, that has community voice in terms of what they need in their region, and build out skills building strategy for their area. It's a little bit different than just looking at it industry based, but being able to provide support, the details of what that what we're looking for in that in some of that regional plan or regional partnerships is in the RFA. And this ties into to Carol, to your question. We certainly heard about the situation in the Bay Area in terms of the refinery closure. So we did create some space in the RFA so that it could potentially, if there is a regional plan, if there are folks coming together that have an opportunity to address skills there under this particular RFA, it creates that opportunity. They'll have to hit, all of the different marks. Separately though, there is, what Tim was referring to earlier in terms of doing the legislation and creating a just transition map in collaboration with OPR. I think those are sort of 2 separate processes in a way that we want to see them come together, but it's not all going to necessarily get resolved through the RFA. So I hope I'm not creating confusion around it, but I think, Carol, that issue, I'm hoping, will be addressed also in the OPR discussions in terms of broader, what is the map, what needs to happen in terms of just transition. So again, just to recap, we have an open RFA that's there in the link. We have been working with, we were tasked with building out 20 partnerships in 5 years with the GGRF funds. The first year, we had 2 years to encumber the first year. So we're in that second year. So it's our first round of investments. And we feel that with the closed process and the open process, we will be very close, if not hit our 5-year target of 20 partnerships. That doesn't mean that the work is ending. It just means there's a lot of need and that there's a lot of work and opportunities to really push this initiative. And I think that once, getting the projects funded on the front end is really the beginning of the work, right? Getting the work done and meeting the needs of workers, and especially in these times, in these challenging times. I think partnerships can get tested, but I think we've seen that it's the time when industry and employers and workers and labor can come together to find solutions to build a resilient workforce and resilient industries, and support our communities. So we're working really hard to echo that with partners and partnerships, and look for ways to invest in that, so that those partnerships live beyond any investment that we make. That there's a real structure that gets established with these industries that's going to support generations of workers ahead. So a lot of work happening. We again finally have a field team that we're onboarding and working with, that will be able to support these projects that are coming on board, and hopefully continue to meet the needs of workers in California.
Thank you, Aida. This is extraordinary efforts, and this ties into the Governor's California for All. It ties into the racial social equity issues that have been, forefront nationally, and it goes back to the AB398 efforts. This is really a great standard that we can all be proud of. Thank you for your efforts. Joelle, if you can.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Chairman. Joelle Hurst. I oversee all the program implementation at the California Workforce Development Board. Thank you, Aida. My staff have been working a lot with the field team and getting out all the High Road Initiative solicitations. In addition, they've also been working with all of our currently funded projects to extend their contracts or their subgrants with time-only extensions in response to some of the setbacks due to the COVID crisis. And then the other two initiatives is the regional plan implementation money from the we owe a 15% discretionary dollars. That RFA is currently posted and it went up today. And those applications are due December 4th. And then the last one is the Workforce Accelerator Fund. Also, we owe a discretionary dollars that is currently being framed out, and our target is to get that solicitation out next month. And I did put the link in the chat to both the regional plan implementation and to the High Road Training Partnership pages where the current postings are.
Thank you so much for sharing that update, Joel, and thank you for sharing those links also in our group chat. We are moving on to other business now, and I'm going to tee it up to our colleague, Joseph Williams, who wants to share some of his thoughts about the need for a state youth strategy.
Thank you, Angelo. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Just been reading different reports, and I've been engaged in the youth system for about 20 years as a program operator. And with this idea of the fourth industrial revolution coming along, or is actually happening now, the thought is that the state could have a drastic influence and opportunity to provide guidance and direction to local workforce boards, specifically those that have youth councils, by establishing a committee at the state board. There's an opportunity now with being able to really organize a statewide system. The way that our current system is structured is that there's so many doors that youth can enter into the youth system that sometimes they get lost. It's considered to be a service maze. And by us having a specific focus on youth and policy, we can help local areas organize the youth system in a way that helps us actually measure the impact and the investments that are allocated towards youth development. And so I wanted to just really put the idea out there and get thoughts about whether the board and our executive director thought that there would be value in having a youth committee. Again, specifically providing guidance to local areas. And once it's established, if there's agreement, the impacts could be for other entities could take advantage of the conversations that this committee would have, the resources that could get organized as a result, of the conversations. It could have an impact on K-12. It can have an impact on, the criminal justice system. And so, again, I just think that the workforce board is missing an opportunity by, or I think can take advantage of the opportunity to just have a more organized effort and a more organized voice in how youth resources get allocated as a state. I got a 10-month-old here sitting here, so this is a really important topic for me to
Yeah,
really
that's
just.
that's your own youth committee right there, huh, Joseph?
Man, oh
It's
man,
a future work, our
Yeah.
future workforce.
Future of work, yeah, and really, having those conversations of us really thinking about what the future of work is going to be like, and what the future worker is like. I'll yield because of the noise. I'll yield for the, but I gotta say that Zaya, can you just wait? It's not your turn. Give me 2 seconds. But the Institute for the Future talks about. I need some relief in here. But the Institute for the Future talks about the worker of the future needing. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you don't understand, Joseph. It's always her turn.
Right. But it talks about the work of the future needing 5 streams of income just to be able to survive in the future. And so I just think these would be valuable conversations for us to have and to be able to share with our counties and our cities and then our other collaborative partners. So thank you for indulging me. Thanks for providing space on this. And if anyone is interested in talking further, I'll make myself available. Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership and voice on this. And I have a 15-month at home also, so I can relate to what you're going through. I just want to say a couple of comments about that. One, we appreciate your whole career. You've always been very focused on youth. I know that Pradeep is here on behalf of one of our board members, State Superintendent Tony Thurman. And so, there's a potential nexus there. And I know Tim is exploring ways right now with staff on how this could be a mechanism to move forward. I know Secretary Julie Su has also expressed interest in not only in youth areas in general, but specific things that we can do to move forward. Because we know that with COVID-19 and the pandemic, youth unemployment and impacts have been just particularly devastating, even amongst the overall societal issues. And so thank you again for your efforts, Joseph. We'll be in touch. So, Pradeep wants to say some thoughts.
Very quickly, I just want to say that in following up Joseph Williams' comments, at the end of this month, we will be releasing a community schools partnership grant. It comes out of AB98, $45 million. It's for LEAs that are existing community schools, but we're not actually, we're sort of being a little more flexible of how you define a community school. And there's some criteria that defines that community school. And I think there is opportunity for that effort to interconnect with the local workforce boards and trying to get them involved in what we're calling a whole school approach. I know, Angelo, you and I have talked about that issue a few months back, and I think this is an opportunity that exists. It's a 3-year grant for those LEAs, and we'll have the RFA out at the end of the month, and Tim will make sure we'll get it to you so you can send it to the workforce boards, local boards.
Thank you, Pradeep. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the community schools concept, I definitely encourage you to look into it. I think, again, the timeliness of it, it's always vital, but especially during the pandemic, the need for schools to be hubs of broader social services, healthcare, and other aspects beyond just the delivery of education is just vital. And so thank you for identifying that resource that's coming. We will now, I'll now share that our dates for our next executive committee and board meeting, which board meeting is coming up soon, I think next week. But for the following year, We are still in the process of confirming those, and so staff will be sharing that out as soon as they're confirmed. We will now have public comment. Curtis, has anybody submitted any public comments?
One real quick, Angela. The board meeting is actually on October 28th, I believe.
Sorry, thank you for.
That's correct. Yeah.
October 28th. Sorry about that. Curtis, is there any public comment?
I'll check in with Clemente.
No public comment as of yet.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone so much for your time. We were able to finish a few minutes early.
Hey, Angela, I just got one thing. Could somebody, there was a lot of information shared on grant opportunities and dates and things like that. I tried to write down everything that I could. But is that available someplace? Do we just go to the website to find out, or is there like a list of things that we could help brief our local boards on?
Sure. Pradeep, if you could just please share that with our staff about the upcoming community schools grant, and then our staff can disseminate that.
And I think Joelle is going to.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about all the other ones too, from the apprenticeship, the construction trade stuff and everything. So.
Right. So yeah, definitely. I put 2 links in the chat. One goes directly to the High Road Training Partnership Initiative page. And that one is where the solicitation to the current open High Road Training Partnership is. And that's under the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund dollars. And then the other link I put in there was to the regional training, regional plan implementation solicitation. And so those are both there. And then you will get noticed as one of our board members when the Accelerator gets posted next month.
Thank you, Joelle. John has a comment.
Tim, I don't know if it's appropriate to put the link to the Unite LA, but at a minimum, could the State Workforce Board put the governor's comments about Alma up on the State Workforce website, sort of acknowledging her? I think that's appropriate. That's a request I think probably a sentiment a lot of folks would share.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Thanks, John.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. And the governor did issue a press release specifically on the passing of Dr. Alma Salazar. Thank you so much for saying that, and we will follow up on that. At this time, we will close this meeting in honor of our dear friend and colleague, Dr. Alma Salazar, at 11:54 a.m. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.